Greetings, everyone. My name is DJ Wells. I'm the Executive Director of the Mensah Research Institute and the Communications Director of Mensah Medical, and you've joined us once again for our weekly conversation, Coping with COVID, where we're talking about those issues that are challenging us during this unprecedented time. Today, we've got a wonderful conversation, an important conversation, given what's going on in the news today, as so many folks are now wrestling with, so many states are wrestling with President Trump's request that we move back to opening our schools. And there's certainly a lot to be discussed as it relates to the reopening of schools. And so we've got with us a couple of administrators at school districts here in Illinois. They're going to be talking with Dr. Mensah about some of the pertinent issues as it relates to keeping our kids safe, keeping our teachers safe, and keeping all of our families safe as we navigate through this COVID pandemic and reopening schools and trying to get back to, we use this term all the time, the new normal that is
the new norm.
COVID-19. So as always, I encourage you to be interactive in this process. Please do, if you've got questions that you want to ask of our panelists, if you want to participate in the conversation, there's a Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. If you're watching on a computer, it might be at the top of your screen if you're using a tablet or a phone. But touch that Q&A tab and you can submit questions. And we will, after Dr. Mensah and our two panelists have had a chance to chat for a while, then we will begin answering some of those questions. I'll come back in after about 45, 50 minutes and make sure that those questions get answered. So please do, this is an interactive process. We encourage you to participate. And so with that, without any further ado, let's get the conversation started. Dr. Mensah, thank you so much for being with us. Ms. Veal, Ms. Mull, thank you for joining us as well. And Dr. Mensah, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Wells. We've had some very interesting conversations over the last few months. From psychologists, from therapists, from professionals who are directly in the medical field as physicians. And we had some very interesting inquiries that came from the academic side of this COVID phenomenon from educators. We've been contacted by principals. We've been having conversations with some very significant people in administrative positions, and we're fortunate enough to have two of those people here with us today. And so I want to first of all thank our guests for coming on board and for having these very key conversations. You bring some very interesting insight with regard to the non-political side of schools opening. And I don't just mean about physical health, but we've spoken before about a very interesting class or group of students whom without school actually don't have a place to eat. They don't have a place to bathe. They don't have a place to literally do better when it comes to just normal daily living. And so before we get started with some of the challenges around COVID, I would really like the two of you and Ms. Veal, I'd like you to kind of chime in first and share with everyone sort of the plight of some of these children who are in the Lake County of all county school districts, Lake County in Illinois.
I'm going to address this. Beverly probably could address this better because I think she was over this program this summer. However, District 6, which is in Zion, Illinois, they really did an outstanding job with that. We did not, I don't think any family in our district, Beverly, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Mull, I don't think any family in our district went hungry this summer or from March 13th through now, which is July 16th. Every week, every Friday and every Monday, we have an update that we send to parents, administrators, teachers, letting them know what our food bank is open. It closes on Friday, but they give students and families 2 days of meals on Thursday. Now we don't, to my knowledge, cover weekends, but we didn't cover weekends during the school year. but they have not. We have been very good about that. We also have relationships with food banks. Many of the churches, and Ms. Mull can address that better than I can, have, like Shiloh Baptist Church in Waukegan has a very wonderful food bank. There's a food bank in Waukegan through the township. Anyone in Lake County should not have gone without a meal since March 13th. Ms. Mull, you want to address that from there?
That's correct, Tara. All the children have been fed. I mean, they are providing the meals. Now on Thursdays, they're giving 2 meals. They're giving a meal for Thursday and a meal for Friday. So all of the students from the time school was closed in March till now, families in Zion are being fed. They're getting a breakfast and a lunch every single day. Yes, so that need is being met because Dr. Mensah, you're correct. There are families that are dependent upon the school meals. So District 6 made sure that those families would still be provided. And they had additional families that joined in obtaining food. And it really is a dependency. And sometimes you forget about that component until a crisis like this hits. And then you're reminded how many families are still struggling to eat. And the shortage of food in households, it was a wake-up call for many of us. It was a reminder, not a wake-up, I'll just say it was a reminder to us that when this pandemic hit, it was a reminder of the shortage of food.
And also going along with what Ms. Mull just stated, you did not have to attend school in District 6. I don't think we even checked for identification, did we?
No, we did not.
If you drove up to our doors, you were given food. So we didn't ask for a driver's license. We didn't do the screening like they want to do at the borders. If you came, we fed you. And we are continuing to do that.
So this is so much more than just education we're talking about. This is really a mission. This is a community mission and a place to help heal individuals of certain levels of strife that would be otherwise unaddressed, given the circumstances that some of these folks have. And that's something that we don't always think about when we talk about school and education. We're pretty much focused on school and education. But you folks who are on the front lines of this situation recognize, how do you really study if you don't eat? How can you learn if you're malnourished, if you have no place to go? So the ramifications of the COVID situation were far greater than people imagine, because it's not simply one of academia. Certainly survival is huge, okay? But at the same time, the challenge to survival happens if schools are closed or not able out. So these are very, very important and significant pieces here. Now, how do we look to bridge the gap? Now, you folks have been inundated. I think our governor is doing a tremendous job with COVID overall. But what people don't realize are the mechanics, the inner workings, the stressors that occur when you are handed a document by the government that says, this is what you've got to turn around and fix. And you've got, 30, 45 days to do it?
Yep.
30 days?
85 pages in 30 days.
Mrs. Veal, could you just share with everyone kind of some of the things that are expected to change and what that really looks like, what the administration has to channel, to coordinate, to prepare for it in such a very short period of time?
It is a limited time, and let me just say that District 6, District 126, District 187, all of them, District 60, everyone is caught at a loss. No one anticipated this, okay? We didn't have a plan B. If there's a fire drill, we know what to do in case of a fire. If there's a terrorist, we know what to do in case of a terrorist. But not, to my knowledge, Illinois was not prepared for a pandemic. So when we left school, and Ms. Mull, you can attest to this, on March 13th, we told the students that they would not return for 2 weeks because that was spring break for our district. So we were comfortable in giving them a little packet maybe for a week, because even as administrators and teachers and leaders in the school and the stakeholders, we honestly thought we were coming back in 3 weeks. So 1 week worth of work, we thought we were good to go. Then as that progressed, we would get updates. And Ms. Mull, you know, those updates were coming daily. You know, click, 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 it'll be another week. Have your kids come. Now, Ms. Mull helped to distribute all these packets, because initially, because we did not know we were going to be out for the whole 3-month duration, we were given paper packets from the state, correct, Ms. Mull?
Yes.
And so the parents would drive up, and they had it very organized. They would have like the 5th grade here, 6th grade here, 8th grade here, and you would drive up and they would be handed to you. And because of the pandemic, you couldn't come out of your car. So they were actually handing it to the Mrs. Mull's group. They would distribute them to the parents. This went on for about 3 weeks. And then they realized this may be a little more serious than we thought, because now we're 3 weeks past our spring break. So that's actually 5 weeks. Spring break was 2 weeks. At this point, we solicited a program through a company called Admendum, and that was an electronic remote. Never in District 6, and I would venture to say in any of these districts, have we ever used remote learning. This is where homeschoolers had an advantage. Students who had been homeschooled, who we are now, truth be told, we're going to them to ask them, how do we do this? All right, I know we talked about you guys. I know we said you know what you're doing. We're sorry. Now, how do we do this, okay? And this is true. I mean, their director has been recruited by the state to give us direction so that we know how to pursue the upcoming 2021 school year. So when we hired, in our case, we went with a company called Admendum. Everybody had their own form of remote teaching. Therefore, the kids were learning differently in each district. But not only were they learning differently in each district, like 60 is out of Waukegan, for example, or 187 is North Chicago, they were learning differently even in our own district, which I didn't know until last week. Because we, Ms. Mull, I don't know if you know this, but we were instructing the elementary school to teach differently than we did our middle school and high school. So our elementary school was strictly paper. Now almost 99% of them, they just had paper. And in our district, because it's a Title IX, which means it's diverse and poverty, legally poverty stricken, okay? It's not really a poor district if you look at it, but it's listed as Title IX. Our students didn't necessarily have, a lot of them, I think it was 56, 58% did not have computers or access to an internet. So when we went Admendum, good in theory, but it only approached 36% of the students. And of the 36% of the students, maybe only 25% of them actually attend the class. So you don't have a discipline like you'd have at a Woodland school district, where they have parents who are working with them. And even though they were home, there was somebody there taking care of business with those students. And our district, many of them are bilingual, which means their parents may not speak English at all. Most of them may not have a parent who even finished high school. That is real serious. And that's what we deal with every day. So when it came to them doing the computer, in terms of assisting their students, their children with the computer at Admendum, didn't work. And then when we received our program, it literally showed, I'm ashamed to say, that our students weren't on grade level, okay? That's not the student's fault, that's someone else's fault, we'll discuss another time. But the students, when they received the program, they couldn't do it. It was so far over their heads because it was really geared toward a Highland Park, a Lake Forest, a Woodland. It was geared toward that community. So our students were struggling. And I think that may have been one of the reasons they opted out. You know, it was over their heads. Those who did attend, and there were quite a few who did, we attended religiously. We were also able to offer them additional tutoring because they wanted to catch up. But it was a problem because the Admendum was set, it was a general way of teaching everybody, like Common Core standards. Common Core doesn't work for everyone because everybody is on a different level, but Common Core only teaches to that level, and that's what Admendum did. Feel free to jump in here, Beverly, at any time.
You're doing good. You're doing good.
So where we are today, in terms of going back to 2021. I sent this to Dr. Wells to say a possible topic was, where are we going today? And that is changing day to day. When I spoke with Dr. Mensah last Saturday, what I thought I was going to talk to got very curtailed on Monday when we were told to pull back, don't say anything. Because it's supposed to say we want to start on September 8th. Now we're starting August 20th with registration per what you stated, Ms. Mull, as August 8th. Why is this? Because certain school districts in Illinois are pursuing the college calendar. And a college calendar is in Illinois. I'm speaking of Northwestern, University of Chicago, North Illinois University, are going with an early start date in August with an end date in November. I believe it's the weekend of Thanksgiving. And we're doing that because they are anticipating a flu and an upsurge of the COVID-19. Knowing that if we were to start in September, to finish the year, we would have to go face-to-face to December. And per the governor's 5-step program, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, you have to have X amount of days face-to-face, okay? Given that, if you start in August and if you start in September and we end in November, we're not gonna fulfill that semester. So we know that on the onset, so therefore we're gonna start in August. So that if we do have to do this roller coaster, as Governor Pritzker referred to it, and we end in November, our kids are good to go and they will have one full semester. Are they gonna have the standardized test? Probably not. So we're not gonna focus that much on the NEWA test in the first semester, because our first semester in most school districts are trying to make up for the last semester. We know the kids didn't get everything they should have received. We understand that. We know many parents didn't provide it. We know the ones that we did provide it, kids didn't do it. They were home. I mean, they're kids. You say you don't have to go to school. You think they're gonna run to the computer bed. I can't wait to see you, Miss Thomas. No, you're gonna get some, but they're kids, and we were kids. And they look at, oh, free day, okay? Remember snow days? We didn't go and do any work on snow day. We watched television, went outside and played the snow. So we're gonna take this first month and a half, maybe the first 6 weeks, to bridge what they didn't receive on the standards last semester. So this semester is gonna be a repeat. We're hoping teachers will collaborate with the previous teacher of the previous class. For example, and I don't want to monopolize this, but if a teacher was teaching 7th grade, let's say they taught 7th grade science, we would hope that they would collaborate the first week with the 8th grade teacher to say, this is where we are, this is where we ended, and this is how we're gonna measure their improvement, okay? Then that 8th grade teacher gets a way of assessing the incoming students. I had suggested we do this a week before school starts. I think if we do this 2 days, which is what has been put on the table, it's not enough time. Kids were out for 3 months. 2 days cannot give you a whole diary of the previous students. So we need to be fair to the students. We know that learning was lost. So let's take them step by step, because if we overwhelm them, we're gonna lose them. And we don't wanna do that. Ms. Mull, I'm gonna chill. Let you go.
No, let me see.
She's over. The one reason I really wanted to talk, Ms. Mull is going to be really over. I just found out, you don't know this, so I'm going to tell you because I just found what you're going to do. She's over. Kids can't come into school without her department. She's over testing their temperatures. And it's more than that, Beverly. I'm going to send it to you. It's like 12 things you have to test for. I kid you not. And if they have had a fever, or if they live with someone who is highly suspect to be receptive to certain types of things, you literally have to turn them away. We're not admitting them in the class. We can't take more than 50. That's another new thing. So there's a lot of provision. I'll send them to you tonight. I received them today. Okay. We're gonna have a slow entry process, and there has to be someone at every door of the schools, and all the schools. So go ahead, Ms. Mull.
Yeah. Excuse me, I'm trying to figure out how to show myself out of this square.
Oh,
you're seeing very well. Don't worry about that.
Oh, I'm good? Okay. All right. So to piggyback on what Tara said, we do have a concern But one of the things that I'm going to really try to work on is reassuring the families that we're in this together. They need to be reassured that their child's education is still of value. There's still an importance. We still want your child to be educated. I've had to help some parents like to de-escalate because they were just so, frustrated about everything that happened so fast. And so I share with them, we're in this together. So I think one of the things District 6 is going to have to do imperatively is we're going to have to remind these families that we're going to get through this together. And we can't just say it. We got to show them that we're going to get through this together. They're concerned about, like Tara said, they missed a whole lot of work. So in March, you had students that are already behind. They've gotten frustrated. You already get frustrated because you're behind and you're sitting in a classroom, the teacher's trying to help you to catch up. But what if the teacher does not know how to reach you? What if you just get lost in the classroom? And this is no indictment on an educator, but you haven't been able to reach that child. So many of the students have fallen through the cracks. So then you have parents that are frustrated, students that are frustrated, and they say, forget it. So now students are coming back to school that are not prepared, they're behind. And then it's like, so how do we catch up? What do we do? Do we just let that time go that we missed? Do we start afresh? Do we have a different method of teaching? How do we reach our students? And I'm glad to hear, Tara, that they are reaching out to the homeschool because we need help. These are uncharted waters. Nobody knew, nobody had an anticipation, nobody never experienced it. So you got a bunch of minds coming together saying, what's best for the people? What's best for the educational arena? And trying to figure it out. So I believe having the people at the table that really do care about the kids and really care, and I'm not saying that when I say really do care, willing to get in the trenches to make it happen, the grassroots approach to make education valuable, that it still is valuable, that you still do matter, and we're going to get through this. It is new, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. That doesn't mean that you can't reach the goals that have been set for you. And so I have just like Tara, our bar is high at school, and our expectations are high, and we just expected the children to meet those expectations, and many of them did. But it also starts from home. We have got to partner with these parents. Parents are you're the greatest stakeholder in this. So you have to help us educate your child. It's not just expecting us to do everything by ourselves. That's going to be another big component for District 6, is having parental involvement and helping to get through this process.
Thank you, Mrs. Mull. I think that's very key what you said. And it's not, of course, just District 6. Education everywhere, even to some degree, right, Mr. Wells, at the collegiate level, involves the parents and understanding of what's going on and working together with the teachers. The irony here is that the parents are looking for guidance from the teachers. I think the teachers are looking for some level of reflection from the parents and input from the parents. And we need to have that meeting of the minds, absolutely. What do you think? How can we best help? This is what the standards were set up against. What is your input with regard to this? And that dialogue needs to continue. I think that's amazing and absolutely necessary, because the first step is identification of the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
You folks are in the trenches, you know what's going on. Parents are kind of sitting back waiting to say, hey, what's happening? And now we're starting to get the emails. We're starting to get the letters regarding what the requirements are. And many of us are going, what? How is this supposed to work? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? Well, this is where I think right now that the dialogue is very key to happening at this point in time, because we're still in July. So we've got roughly 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month or so to kind of get things moving, get things coordinated. Of course, our side of the equation here on the medical side is doing our best to help students and teachers stay healthy. Now, up until now, and this is a little bit of a curveball I'm going to throw you folks, up until now, we've had the idea of social distancing and masks. And it's been the little face mask that covers, this portion of you. Many folks are wearing this so that we come around looking like this.
Mhm.
And, that's all great. But if you see people at the stores, many people are like this, okay? Because you can't breathe like this all day long.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
right.
And now you're going to tell children that this is what they're going to have to do all day long and in class. It's going to be very hard to keep that straight and hard to keep that going. Many children will comply pretty easily. Some will have more difficult times. But nonetheless, it's yet another challenge that the school system has to deal with. The social dynamics of interaction. To be a child is to interact on a physical level, on an emotional level, on a curiosity level. That's how they grow. So now we're telling them that, okay, you're going to have to be keeping your distance. Now, there are some school districts, we've seen them on TV, where they're putting together desks that have these cubed plastic things,
Right.
surrounding them. So now your child is going to have to sit there in that. And, we probably don't even realize any kind of distortion that may be on the board, okay? Or if there's now an online process with a child at the desk looking at a computer screen so that the information doesn't get blurred or distorted from a visual perspective, okay? There are a lot of things that we're going to be learning, and this is all so fresh, and it's going to be very hard, but we have to pay attention to some of these really esoteric details. One of the things that's come out that's fairly new is this strange new hazmat suit, okay?
Yeah.
And it looks like a big giant dome-shaped thing that's possibly even inflated that covers the chest and creates sort of your own little bubble world. We've used that term, right, Mr. Wells, going back to antiquity about somebody who's just in their own little world. And quite literally, that's what this device is creating. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, because I may not be speaking too clearly on this, imagine any science fiction movie where people are going to Mars back in the 1960s. And from here on up, the suit that they're in is pretty much what somebody's come up with.
Is that a prototype or that's an actual?
It's an actual device that fits over the shoulders. The arms are free, everything from the waist down, actually the mid-chest is free and open. But you're in your own contained little world here. There have been teachers, at least according to the news, there have been doctors, teachers, educators, plenty of folks who have started ordering these devices. Now, truth be told, I'm not sure they've been fully tested, but if we look at anything else, just the idea of being able to prevent exposure would be severely important because it is a barrier on all sides. It's a full barrier against transmission for teachers and students. And many people have said, well, the teachers are the people we really need to be cautious about. And it's very, very true. But the students, as they interact, now they're wonderful little fields of carrying, all sorts of viruses and germs. They'll take that home with them, okay?
Yep.
And they may infect mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or Aunt Susie, whomever. So the idea of these self-contained little worlds, I think, is something that we may realistically be able to examine, before the school semester gets fully underway. And if that happens, we actually might be able to open up more students into the school, into the classroom, maybe not fully, but with good barrier protection. Then the idea of communicability is a whole different creature. Because in these suits, children can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do this, they can't do all the stuff, or any of the stuff actually, that allows them to transmit everything from viruses to bacteria more fully. And we can have this conversation a little bit more so about what these devices look like and where they can be acquired. The next generation of devices is actually being created even as we speak. But it is something that we're hoping to share is now out there as a potential to help restore not just some part of the educational system. And folks, let me just be clear. I'm not that kind of a scientist. I don't have stock in this stuff, okay? I do a lot of research, and this is what we've literally seen, and it's being utilized. So please don't send me letters asking me exactly how this works. But what I can say is that there's potential there. But until we get to that now being, oh, by the way, the cost is about $250 per unit.
I was going to ask you about that because as a result of the coronavirus aid, it's called CARES, C-A-R-E, okay, it's an acronym. And it means Coronavirus AIDS Relief and Economic Security Act funds. It would cover that. All schools, that's a federal funded program, all schools have access to that money for devices like that. That's why I was asking you, is this a prototype? And you're saying, no, there's a second phase.
No, this is available. This is available.
Is it American made?
And
or is it?
let me jump in here. It is a product that is available, and actually it's being marketed primarily as an option for people who want to travel, who want to get on airplanes, because it allows them to kind of be in their own bubble while they're on an airplane and not have to breathe the recycled air that you would find on an airplane. But Ms. Veal, you're actually starting to raise a point that was going to be one that I'm starting to see popping up in the questions here, and that is, you were talking before about the limited number of students in your district or the families in your district who even have access to computer technology, which makes for blended education or at-home education using technology difficult. What are the options of acquiring these types of devices for children in a district that may not have the resources to do so? But you're saying that there is a CARES Act.
The CARES Act came after. Okay, so the CARES Act came after March 13th. So on March 13th, when our district went into a panic for the pandemic, only about 36% had social media access, either through a phone, iPad, or computer. However, going back this fall, all students will have computers. Now that's great, but we now have to make sure that all students have access to the internet. Right. So if you recall, during the pandemic when it originally started, I believe it was Comcast provided everybody with internet. You had to call in and set up your account, but it was free. That expired June 15th. So we're hoping to do something, have an antenna, have a school mobile bill with some type of satellite on it, where the students can have it, because it's great that we're going to give them these computers, and they're all going to have a computer in our district. I would say in every district, every student will have technology. But now we've got to ensure and connect that technology to internet. So if these companies aren't willing to provide it, like your Dish or your AT&T or Comcast, that's another dilemma. You fix one hole and then you find another hole. So the kids are all going to have it. As a result of CARES, as a result of that act, everyone will have a computer.
Now,
I have a question.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Mull.
So how do you use the hazmat in the cafeteria at school when the children are having lunch?
Yeah.
How would that work for the students if they decide to bring that gadget into the school? Well, maybe they haven't thought that far through, but as you're talking, I'm thinking, so how do you still have social, because in the cafeteria, they're still figuring out how they're gonna set these children, because there's over 100 students in District 6. There was 4 lunch periods, over 100 students.
Each period?
For each lunch period.
Yeah, but those masks would have to be provided by the school. Those kids wouldn't buy them and bring them to the school. We would have to purchase and provide those to the students.
Yes, these are units. So it's not a simple mask. It is literally an entire helmet bubble device.
Right.
And I do want to clarify, there are already doctors, lawyers, clinics who are using these things. So it's not simply for travel. That is one of the big pieces that Mr. Wells brought up, that there's a really strong perk for, but it allows for mobility in a variety of arenas. And you're right, how does one eat? Well, food was not part of the equation when it came to this. Okay, so somewhere along the lines, even if you're wearing one of these,
Right.
good luck with that
Take it off.
cheeseburger, right? It's got to come off.
You gotta take it
So-
off.
Question becomes mechanically, how does that work? But I think when we look at the real feasibility, it's going to be one of these things where the administrators like you and the directors like Governor Pritzker look at whether or not this is really something feasible, but it is something that is possible. And I'm glad that people are looking at the possibilities, because this could be a real game changer and a real lifesaver for teachers and students, and to give a little bit of peace of mind for parents out there who've got children who, hey, they've got to go to work, but their child has asthma.
Mhm.
Their child has some type of difficulty. I had one parent ask earlier today, so how is somebody who's got autism going to react to this
Oh,
whole phenomenon? Okay. And I said, that's a whole nother arena,
Yeah.
But as we move from what used to be science fiction that is now science fact, okay,
Yes.
and the bubble suits, let's move more towards some of the mechanistically challenging pieces that we're going to be going through the next few weeks here. So we're going to be starting with catch-up, as Ms. Tara talked about, in that transition period. The implementation for the next 3 months of some type of academic regimen. But what happens after that? Now, especially in Chicago and in many states like Illinois, come December, January, we're in winter, okay? And what happens after winter?
right now for our district, and I would say many districts, we're operating on the basis or the expectation that it's gonna be 100% remote. Right now, we have to have 50% minimum, which we're gonna go a little more than that in our district, of face-to-face contact. But in January, we're anticipating being 100% remote.
Hmm.
So we're hoping by then, though, because we're going to be doing a certain percentage of remote during the year, kids will have remote. They're going to have remote when they come back to school in the fall. But hopefully by then, they'll be so accustomed to it. See, when it started in March of this year, there was no preparation. They had no idea. Teachers didn't know how to use it. We were training teachers literally 2 days before they had these remote admin programs. 2 days. They didn't lock that in. They were learning as they went. But now with the next 80, 90 days, these kids will be doing remote every day. So when it kicks in January, it should be a very smooth transition. They're all gonna have technology. Teachers will know how to make film at home. Right now, for the last 2 weeks, we've been training in District 630 instructors and administrators, and how to use the new remote system, how to use Google Meets, how to use Google Classrooms, how to incorporate that into our system and to teach students how to do that. Over half of our teachers last year did not use Google Classrooms. Now, that may not be the case in Gurney or in some of the other schools, but they didn't have to because we had face-to-face. Now we have to use Google Classroom every day, even though we're doing face-to-face. The teachers will be utilizing Google Classroom. They will be utilizing Google Meets. They will be utilizing this thing. It's called Google Dual Grid Fit, all of that. And they're training on it right now. So, but the problem again, we're gonna open August 20th. They wanna give the teachers 1 week to train the other teachers. It's 3 days more. I think they need more.
Let me ask this question as a parent, okay? What would you anticipate or share with parents that they really need to start getting prepared for? What is the shock value, the difficulty in terms of expectation? What are the good pieces? How do we bring relief to the parental mind at this point that there is something really solid there? You've talked about a lot of great points, both you and Mrs. Mull, but after we go through all this, the parent sits down and says, all right, now, what does that mean for me? Am I going to have to somehow timeshare at work? Am I going to have to stay at home? How is all this working? How is this going to work out for parents across the spectrum?
And I'm not sure that we really have the answer to that. I will tell you that in Australia, if we do what they did, we'll be in fine shape. They actually subsidize parents who stayed home. Someone told me there's like $72 billion or $1 million if we were to subsidize every family, which is a lot cheaper than what we're spending in the Middle East every month, and to subsidize those families. United States can afford to subsidize $1,200 a week families so that they don't lose their homes, they don't use any of the utilities. We can afford to do that. What would that do? Number one, it's going to, hopefully, if parents get involved, just like Ms. Mull stated, we really need that component. The largest component that we're concerned with now are the K through 3rd grade. So those little kids, they're gonna pull those masks out. They're gonna be tempted because they're not used to being inhibited like that. So we're having, our biggest task is not the 5th through high school. It's that K through 3rd and 4th grader, 3rd graders really. Parents, if they're allowed to stay home with them, they could help us with that if we were 100% remote. But since our district is not going to be doing that like that, we're gonna have to train them. We're gonna have to train our parents. Parents need to be trained as much as these students. Trust me. If we can get them to buy into this, but this is the new norm. Dr. Mensah said that at the onset, the new norm. We're not going back to 5 days of school in the buildings. I would be very surprised. Right now, they're training us as administrators, as teachers, as stakeholders to prepare for the new norm. So we've got to teach our children, do not take off the mask. We need to teach the president to wear a mask, to set an example for the rest of the country. Because you've got people going out thinking, well, it's okay because if the leader of our country doesn't wear it, then it's okay. No, it's not okay. And I think the biggest thing is getting kids trained for it, getting the parents trained in technology. Parents are afraid. You'd be surprised, Dr. Wells and Dr. Mensah, how many parents are afraid of technology? They know how to use their phone, but you ask them to do an Excel. No, you're not. No, you're not.
Ms. Carr, look, I will confess to the entire galaxy, I barely know how to use Zoom, okay? It's a strange situation where some technologies, you are right on board. You've got 2 computers, 3 cell phones, but Mr. Wells will tell you, you tell that guy to try to get on board in a meeting at some conference with the Zoom or something else and watch the blank look come all over the face. And, I just represent, I'm sure, quite a few parents out there.
And this is going to help you. Being in this pandemic is helping you. Right now, you're using Zoom. I didn't use Zoom last year. Did you use Zoom, Beverly?
No.
I use Google Meets only for my class, maybe, or for a district conference meeting. But now, this is the new norm. We have families. What's good come out of this? I'll tell you what came out of it good. Families that are now communicating with their relatives all across the country on Zoom. They're meeting once or twice a month to talk because on the phone they don't get it and they're bored. So they're having family reunions on Zoom. I'm not so happy that the pandemic happened, but it brought families closer together. It's bringing families closer together with administrators and educators because now they're actually talking to us. Beverly, there were times you could call home. Could you get a parent?
No.
Oh, but they call you now.
Yes.
Now they want help me, Ms. Mull. What do I do? Okay. But there were times we would send notes, no response. Now we get like, oh, when are they going back? Ms. Thomas, I'm so sorry. We're sorry, Ms. Mull, that we didn't answer the phone. So communications are being reestablished. That's a good thing.
Absolutely. And then just to piggyback on what Tara was saying, I think in helping parents, we're going to have to ask them to be consistent, to be flexible. This is on learning. We're going to be learning together. But if they would be consistent and be willing to be flexible, we can make some great inroads for the school year. That is going to be imperative to help ease their tension and frustration. They're going to have to own their part in moving forward for the upcoming school year. We don't, as educators and administrators, we don't have all of the answers, but we're willing to find them with you. Let's partner. This is going to be a time where the partnership is really going to be evident. And let's just partner together and make this happen for your child.
Mrs. Mull, thank you. You used a very important word. You used the word forward. And I was speaking, one of my good friends was part of the Chicago school system for a long time as a teacher, as an educator, brilliant young lady. And she said something interesting to us. She said that, the education system really hasn't changed much since the turn
Yes,
of the century and the age of the Industrial Revolution.
true.
So in a way, now we're sitting down here with the COVID moment, as Mr. Wells likes to say, the COVID moment, and it is an educational point. My question to you is this an opportunity where we sit down with the challenges and we look at this as a sort of rubber stamp connecting piece until we return to the old normal? And that's what a lot of people are thinking, okay? But is this really more so a reflection of the trial to the next level of education that embraces technology and a new style of learning that may move us into the 21st, 22nd century? And is this really the time to practice so that we get more solid and figure out even better systems to perhaps combine all this technology and face-to-face education? Perhaps it's even just one where it is, alternating, or if it's done purely by an online phenomenon or mechanism. I'm not an educator, so forgive me if it's a really silly question, but it seems as though we're being asked right now to review the old ways that we did things and to realize perhaps really how archaic they are.
Exactly.
And I want to be very clear. I'm an adjunct professor of clinical medicine. I love teaching and educating my residents and tormenting them in person, okay, with questions like no one's business. And there's nothing like that upfront, close and personal approach. So I want people to know I am not a techie, okay? I'm a hands-on kind of an instructor. And yet I have to sit down and ask the question because my colleagues, all of you, have said, that's the old way. But what does the new way look like? What might be the vision for education henceforth? Next year, next fall, what does education look like? Now, I might be putting you folks on the line here, but really, what could that really be doing, given any situation?
You want to answer that first?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I think it's good that we are starting to do things differently. It's hard for people to come out their comfort zones. We've been comfortable with that antiquated school system, the way education has been. I too, Dr. Mensah, I like hands-on. I like in person. I like looking at the responses on the students' faces when they get it, when the light bulb goes off and there's comprehension and they understand what I just said to them and they're ready to take that information and move on with it and acquire good grades. I like that too, but I do not believe if we're going to go back to that way of teaching again. I just don't believe it's going to happen. They don't have a cure for the COVID. You have parents that are saying, I'm not bringing my child into the school because X, Y, Z. So to begin a new approach, to begin the approach of the e-learning, as Tara was saying, and it's a lot of preparation in place. How do we do this and be effective? The antiquated educational system that we have has been in place for decades. So it has been mastered by the people that have been in education. But it's been mastered, but has it been effective? Not for all students, not for all parents. It has not been effective. So let's take this opportunity and think about how we can make it better. How can we make our educational system more effective so that more students benefit? We know the percentage of students that have fallen through the cracks, that have been forgotten about, students that are not prepared when they get to high school for whatever reason. So how about we use this opportunity to help prevent that statistic? Let's think about changing some of the statistics that we have been reading for decades about the educational system that is not equipping and helping our students. And you got parents that complain. We already know there's always gonna be a naysayer. There's always gonna be somebody to find something to complain about. And this is gonna take time. I'm not 100% positive that District 6 is gonna be ready in August. Are we preparing ourselves to get ready? Yes, because are there going to be hiccups? I'm planning for the hiccups, but I'm also planning to massage them and make it better. I'm also preparing myself to do whatever it takes to help our students and to help our parents. But we too, as educators, we got to shift gears. I might not be able to see the kids every day. I might not. I mean, we have a high school in Zion 126. They're going to have school Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. No school on Wednesday, and they're going to disinfect and clean the school. That's the plan currently now for the high school. Have the ninth graders come on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, because they're the newbies. They got to come in and get acclimated to the way.
Right.
Sophomore, juniors, and seniors, they're going to rotate them the other 4 days of the week. So everybody is trying to figure out, how do we do this to make it work? The goal is for children to be educated. That's the goal. So what are we going to do to help our children get the quality education that they deserve? Help parents, but reminding parents, you have to be flexible. You're going to have to be flexible, and you're going to have to be consistent with us and partner with us so that we can make this happen. And then it's a win-win for everyone.
I think adding to that is that educators now are going to be evaluated and viewed as educators and no longer as babysitters. Yes. I think that many parents viewed in certain districts a teacher, well, this is what getting rid of my kid from this certain time. The governor is stating that we must have 5 hours every day of education. There has to be some instruction for 5 days. Now, I'm data driven. I'm the finance person. So the cost, are we going to go back? We can't go back the old way. The industrialized way that Dr. Mensah mentioned of educating, that is true. And we got forced to change on March 13th, 2020, because now we have invested billions of dollars. When you spend this kind of money, trust me, this isn't a test. We're not investing. People, we didn't shut down businesses and they didn't go out of business for 3 months for a test. When people tell me, I'm not really sure this is real. Really? Do you know how much money this country has exhausted and has continued to pay? And when have you known the country to give people $1,200, for anything with no attachment? And literally not even, it's supposed to be a grant. So we'll see about that. But the cost in this new technology is changing so fast. My son, I'll give you an example, and this is happening, Mr. Wells, even on the K through 12 level. He started medical school in 2017, and they were using, computers, these little iPads, to go visit patients when they would go do rotations. In 2020, they're using their phone, okay? They don't even use iPads in hospitals now. So when they want to go and visit the patients, the medical students are coming with their phones, because the phones are so high tech now, it's smaller and smaller and smaller. He was using an iPad. I remember my brother, he's a cardiovascular surgeon, and when he was doing his role, when he was younger, there was a clipboard or some kind of board where people would look at it and say, oh, this patient has this. You know what I'm saying? Then that went to a computer. Then that went to an iPad. And now we're at a phone. So the kids' phones are programmed. He's only been in school 3 years. I say this to say, technology is changing that fast. Last year in our school, Ms. Mull, we had Chromebooks. This year they're having iPads. Good. Okay, they're having iPads. They have all of those Chromebooks, though they invested all that money. It's gone. I know certain classrooms in the Princeton side, they received brand new Chromebooks last year. They're obsolete this year. So do parents have a choice to say, oh, I'm going to hang back and it's going to come back? No, I'm a dollar and more than person. I'm telling you, we spend that money, it's not coming back. You're going to have to catch up, and that's okay. We're going to try and start university college on weekends for parents. And these are parents who may not even have a high school diploma. We have got to get them updated, because let me tell you, the present and the future is not waiting on anybody. No. Either you can join or you get left behind. No. The new jobs we got preparing kids for, what this is doing, it is teaching us how to prepare the students for the future. Okay. Everybody's not going to be a teacher. Nurses aren't even the same. Doctors are not the same. Technology, IT, the new CTE programs, they're so innovative, and we must train our students for the future. Industrial revolution, it was great in 1960s. I'm from Detroit. The automobile industry benefited tremendously from that. But now we're in a Simi Valley kind of situation, and we've got to move forward.
I think that's an excellent assessment and revelation for all of us. Very commonsensical, but most of us don't think about it.
I know.
We're not investing all this money so that we can turn around and go
No.
back.
No.
No
No.
government is doing that. They're going to say, now, wait a minute, we invested all this money.
That's right.
What do we get? How can we continue to use this?
Exactly.
So I think that's extremely important for parents like me, sitting back saying, well, hopefully we'll get back to, normal and things will be beautiful and I can continue being ignorant about how to use Zoom and set it up and hire somebody to do that. That's not me. Meanwhile, my child comes up to me and says, well, Daddy, it's in my iPad where I got to do this and this and this. I'm logging on. What cracked me and my wife up a few weeks ago, my youngest got dressed for school. And her mother said, well, where are you going? She said, I have a meeting this morning, Mommy. I've got a Zoom meeting with our team school. And I just burst out laughing.
I love that.
This little girl got herself dressed up and everything.
How old is she?
Well, I can't give out that information, but she's in middle school. Okay.
Okay, and she's having meetings already. See, change.
Meetings. Their little group for assignments were meeting. I said, I couldn't have imagined that. If I had said that to my dad when I was growing up, okay, without revealing my age, he would have just laughed absurdly and said, what meeting do you have to go to, young man? Okay. Yeah. But they're having these meetings. And you're absolutely correct. Obviously, the technology is shifting at such a pace, and we're now discovering what we can do. And most importantly, that gap that existed with individuals who could not afford higher end institutions, so to speak, okay, is being equalized by technology and the wisdom to use that technology. Because we get this technology in the hands of our kids all over the world, and now the lights of education are only going to be limited by the wisdom of the educators providing the guidance. But these kids are doing it all on their own.
And it's closing the globe, because we're in a global situation. Our kids, I tell to students in District 6, your competition is not Lake Forest. It is not Winnetka. It is not Gurney. Your competition is in China. And it's just a phone call away. It's with social media, it's so close, it's crazy. So we're no longer competing for jobs with these people. With your neighboring schools. All of us in America, we're competing on a global basis. That's why technology is imperative and why it's essential. And it's unfortunate. It took a pandemic to force us all to realize this. But no, we're not going back. I'm sorry, Dr. Mensah, those days are gone.
Well, I will do my best. I will find that little button you push for Zoom, and I will master that thing and figure out.
I'm going to hold you to that, Dr. Mensah.
Mr. Wells knows, because whenever I've got a presentation, he is on call to make sure that goes swimmingly from a video perspective. So thank you, Mr. Wells.
Nice.
Mr. Wells, do we have any questions? I think the greatest utility here is to address challenges that parents who want to chime in on and ask about. So if we can take it to the parent realm here, Mr. Wells.
Absolutely. And I've got several questions that have actually come in that are more concerned with the health aspects of all of this. Just to kind of summarize several questions here together, basically what we're getting is people asking what happens for students even when we've got social distancing, even when we've got lessened participation in face-to-face learning. What happens for those patients or for those students who have comorbid conditions? What happens for those students that might have asthma or a breathing condition or diabetes or something like that? Will there be 100% at-home options available for those students, or what can we do to help protect those students when they're in the classroom?
So there's two things I want to address with that. One thing is called the Transition Joint Guidance Committee. And their sole purpose was in addressing what you just stated, the health issue. And they work very closely with the Illinois Department of Public Health. We will not, and no, neither will any other school district be going back to school without the Illinois Department of Public Health approval. So I don't care what the governor says. I don't care what your superintendent says. Until that stamp is on it from the IDPH, it's not going to happen. That's number one. Number two, and that's why I think Beverly's position is so essential, because you have to go through her department before you can even in the school. Students that have those pre-existing diseases are not going to be encouraged to return to school.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are a diabetic, if you do have a pre-existing fever for 3 weeks or any other type of disease that would impair your learning, or maybe even affect your learning and you might affect someone else, we're not encouraging you, and we're not going to let you back in. I can be nice and say, oh, no, because you can't get by Beverly Mull. Once she tests that, that's not going to happen. So those students will not be. So will they be remotely taught? 100%. My understanding, Mr. Wells, tentatively right now, today, July 16th, this could change July 17th, okay? There are going to be X amount of teachers who are trained just to teach remotely. And they will only be teaching a certain amount of students. Because just as Mrs. Mull mentioned earlier, even students who are not sick, there are parents who don't feel comfortable sending their kids back to school because they're not comfortable that we've got this under wraps and that we have vaccines. We don't. So they would just prefer that their children were educated at home. They're like, I'm good with this, okay? So let's say we have 200 teachers. There'll be about 30 teachers who will be trained just to teach remotely or blended. And they will only teach that way, thereby allowing students to have 100% access to a teacher 100% of the time, as opposed to having one teacher teaching, she go home. No. So those kids will always have remote learning 100%. Does that help?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Mr. Chair, I want to ask this question though. Those individuals who are being taught remotely, and I understand now, is what you're talking about a statewide discussion for whether it's private school, public school, Catholic school, whatever?
Whether they're public, private, or charter or homeschool, they have to have access to a teacher 100% of the time. So there'll be access. So if it's a private school, let's say like St. Patrick's. St. Patrick's is not as large as Woodland or District 6, schools. But they will have to allocate maybe 5 or 8 of their teachers to teach remotely 100%. This is mandated by the state government. It's not
St. Patrick's, go.
I just use an example. I'm a Catholic school girl myself. I came out of Catholic schools. Everybody always want to push public schools, and I went to public schools. I'm great, but I am a Catholic school.
And we can anticipate. Obviously the program that you're describing is specific to Illinois, but we can anticipate that this type of format is going to be standard across the country now.
I'm pretty sure, I know for sure it's state regulated. I don't know what Trump does. I don't try to keep up with him day to day. It gives me a headache. But in Illinois and in Michigan, this is the new norm. There will always be access. Some kids are handicapped even. We haven't even discussed the ones who are blind or who are wheelchair accessible. They have to have access. So they will have a teacher full time.
Mm-hmm. That in many ways, that is actually a blessing. That these changes are occurring because now we're making education so much more easily accessible to those who've been severely challenged to get that education before.
And also homeless students. We never discussed the homeless population. And maybe because in certain districts you don't have that, but in our districts and in 60-something, you have a tremendous, Ms. Mull, you can attest to that, a tremendous amount of students who are homeless. And those students are transit. One day they may be in District 6, next day they might be in District 60, they might be in Waukegan. It's wherever they can get housing, because when they go back to these facilities, if you're not there at a certain time, you can't get in. So you're not guaranteed a bed, like, oh, I'm assigned to this facility. No, you're assigned there, you get there in time. So how do we accommodate them? How do we know where they're gonna be? They take my computer from Zion and they take it over to, to Waukegan. Well, I want mine back. So we have the homeless issue. That's another issue that no one's talking about, and it's real.
Wow. Moving on to another question. Ms. Veal, you talked before about the fact that we'll start the semester a little bit early, and then probably finish around Thanksgiving. And then in the winter and spring, probably move to 100% online or remote learning. And given the challenges that we had this year with having to suddenly shift to a new teaching modality, what steps are being put in place to help students make that transition again, to go from learning in schools to going back to learning at home?
Our curriculum that we are developing, and I'll say that we're developing, it has changed, just like Dr. Mensah said, from last year. Tremendous, 100% change. And in our curriculum this year, it involves remote learning. There was no remote learning in the curriculum last year for anybody in the state of Illinois, okay? So kids will be using their computers every day for remote learning. When we shut down March 13th and started up March 17th, this was, no one knew how to use it. Kids didn't know anything about it. But our kids now, they are going to be doing remote learning as soon as they return to school. So when we tell them, in January, we're going to pick up at lesson 8C, it's already in the computer. They've already been doing that. They're just following suit. Now we have a plan. We have a plan now because now we understand there's a pandemic and that it's highly possible that flu is going to make it aggravated worse. So now we're teaching a brand new curriculum, and the curriculum is involving remote blended learning 100%. Kids are not going to be left behind. You know, we use that cliche, no child left behind. Well, we did leave some kids behind. We left a lot of kids behind, but we're not going to leave them behind now because now we're on board. And now the whole curriculum deals with 60, 70% remote, literally that much. Because even the students that are receiving face-to-face, they will have instruction every day remotely, face-to-face.
Wow. Awesome. It's actually rather exciting, you know, aside from the learning new technology thing for parents, it's really just a great, exciting, anticipatory piece that while we move through the transition with some degree of pain, I think we come out the side far stronger.
Right.
Absolutely. So Dr. Mensah can attest to this. So many of our patients and families that come to Mensah Medical, because we're dealing with biochemical imbalances that improve or that hinder, and we're looking to improve brain function. Therefore, many of our patients and their families are very competitive and very interested in assessment and that type of thing. And so there are questions that are popping up here about how will kids be assessed. Will you still have class rank in a school district that teachers aren't necessarily seeing students on a day-to-day basis, and how does that work? How do children get evaluated and
measured?
Advanced? Yes.
Right. It's odd that you say that, but we discussed that today. Actually, today, we're no longer the competitiveness. We don't want to. The governor is asking us not to do that. He's asking us to eliminate all types of competition academically.
Wow.
Okay, because it's remote. So those who would like be at the top of the class will get a certain prize. I know Beverly, in District 6, the principal, she has a way of giving out a television or something like that. Those incentives are gone. They do not want us to use incentives like that. We're trying to encourage kids to learn. So that's changed. They won't have those.
Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Okay. Parent talk here for a minute. So how are students who are in middle school going to be evaluated to get into high school? And
okay, so they will, this year, they're not having, to my knowledge, they're not having the NAP test or the SAT or ACT test by the end of this year, okay? Hopefully, we'll be back to a new norm in 21, 22, and they will reestablish those exams.
Okay.
Will kids receive tests? Absolutely. Now, if you recall, and I'm going to say this slowly because I know I talk fast, and I have administrators and teachers, students tell me, slow down. This year, we were told to do no harm to the students, okay? So we didn't really assess them the way we would have last year at the same time. That's gone. So do not tell your daughter get excited. Oh, don't worry about it. Yeah, she needs to worry now, because teachers will be able to give tests like we have been in the past, and they will be very similar to the ones she did receive when she took the NEP test through the computer, where she can't make a change. Okay, the face-to-face tests, teachers are still going to give them, and they will develop them themselves. So these tests are no longer going to come down from the state. That's a good thing, because you can teach to your population, to your diversity at their level. We didn't have that luxury from March to June. We were teaching on a statewide standardized way. Now, will teachers have to include the standards? Yes. Will they have to do the CCR? And CCR means college career readiness. Yes. Teachers are still going to be held accountable to making sure that these students are college career ready. They still must include the Common Core state standards. So kids are going to get tested. Yes, they are. Are they going to count? Yes, they will. Is it going to be pass-fail? No, it's not. Each district will set how they want to test. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
The last set of questions that we have here that have been coming in relate to how teachers are going to be able to manage, and I would imagine this deals more so with younger children, but of course, I've seen high school kids, and they're just as difficult to manage sometimes as the third and fourth graders. But how will teachers be able to manage their classrooms with children that now have these new health and social distancing demands placed on them? How will teachers be able to police, as it were, whether or not kids are wearing masks, whether or not they're social distancing, whether or not they're washing hands and avoiding physical contact with each other? Will that place an additional burden on the teachers above and beyond the education burden?
It certainly is, and that goes to what Ms. Mull said in terms of having parent cooperation. There will be hand sanitizers in every class. There'll be paper towels. All of that's going to be there. The desks will be cleaned down. The desks right now in most schools, at least in our schools, they're all being separated 6 to 6.5 feet, okay? If you had 25 kids in a class, probably the average classroom right now will have 10 to 12 to maintain that separation. Will teachers be responsible for policing these kids? In essence, yes, they're going to be another thing to add to a teacher's list. They're going to be responsible for that. But we're also going to have social workers in the schools. We will still have psychiatrists who come in, psychologists. We will have a nurse in the school, okay? Hopefully for little things that happen in the day when they get a cut or they're in gym, because they're still going to have gym. We're not trying to change their way of learning totally. We're trying to enhance it, okay? So they're still going to have gym, they'll have drama, they'll have their explore classes. The major problem we're concerned with are the younger kids. The older kids, middle school, like Dr. Mensah's daughter, she's going to follow directions possibly, okay? You don't have any problem with her. And if you do, you can call a parent and tell them we're going to send them home, and the parent's going to make sure you don't have a problem because they don't want them coming home, okay? So that's not going to be a problem. But the smaller kids, when they go to play, we're trying to maintain staying in one classroom. So one of the things that we're going to do different, Mr. Wells, this year, even in middle school, teachers will be changing classes as opposed to students changing classrooms. That's going to be a problem for middle school because they like the ability to change classes. That's one of the incentives of going to middle school. Is that, oh, I get to go to the science class, and I get to go to language arts class, and I get to go to social studies. Not this year. One of the suggestions that's come down from the state is that we have the teachers move and maintain the students in the classroom, which could maintain interaction for the disease to spread. So like if Ms. Mull is teaching science, she'd go into room 112. And then when she finished, Mr. Wells would go into room 112 and he'd teach math. Only the teacher will move. That's going to give you a certain amount of control.
So how will lab types of...
Except for lab. Thank you. Lab is the unique entity, and gym. Those must be, even, now, we haven't mastered this. We're trying to do come up with programs on Zoom for kids to do at home, those who might have diabetes or pre-existing disease or come down with the COVID-19. So we're trying to find some type of program in District 6. Now, other districts may have already mastered this, but except for math, students will have to go to the lab for that, except the ones who are at home, and we're going to try and create Zoom-type labs for them that won't, burn their houses down.
Okay, wait. Now, you just said something, Ms. Veal, that made me think. Now, how is gym supposed to work?
At District 6, we have a really great gym guy. His name is Mr. Myers. And he is in training right now. Over the summer, from March 17th through June 3rd, he had Google Exercise. So it was virtual. Okay. So he'll be doing things like that for the virtual, but for the kids who are going to be there, there'll be like 15 kids at a time doing things, and they'll be spread out 6 feet apart. But the students who are remote, blended, will have an exercise class. They'll have a fun class that they do through virtual learning.
Okay,
it works. It does. I did his exercise program this year. Did you do it, Beverly?
No, I didn't participate.
It was fun. I lost 2 pounds. I'm happy.
I think there's a bit of an issue though here. When we're talking about physical exercise, that's an entirely different physiology than normal walking and social distance. You have increased breathing rates, increased projection of molecules from both the nose and the mouth, and 6 feet is not going to cut it. That is a real.
You may be right. That's the best we have right now. And again, I said to you, what we're doing today, July 16th, may not be what we're doing July 17th. And he is perplexed as to how he's going to do. He's got the Zoom down. He's sure how that's going to work. But making sure that kids are 6 feet, that's the minimum that the state requires. And I agree, they found out that that's not enough. Also, they found out that the mask we need to have in the lower classrooms, they are asking the elementary teachers to wear the shields, the plastic shields, okay? Because the kids need to see their eyes and they need to see their faces. So they're asking K through 3 to wear the shields. So my understanding, there's a grant for that, Beverly, that all schools are gonna get that. So the masks will be mostly from teachers 4th through 12th.
Okay.
If that helps.
Okay. Well, Dr. Mensah, that's all we really have in the way of questions today. I kind of consolidated a few. Do you have any closing questions or thoughts that you want to ask of our guests today before we wrap things up here?
Well, actually, I wanted to thank our guests because on a few levels, as a parent myself, I'm extremely glad to know what the potential options are for our kids. And I really do mean our kids all over the country. And I want to thank you both for your time and energy. And Ms. Tara, you're a tremendous workhorse, never dying in anything that you do. And certainly with education, there's your passion, and Ms. Mull, your passions, both of you, it's coming out really in full force. And we're glad that there are people like you. We thank you very much for all the hard work that you do, and please continue to do so.
Can I just say one thing? I want your listeners to know, as parents, they have the option, and we didn't say this, to decide if they want to send their child back or not. You do not have to. I mean, as an educator, I want you to. As an administrator, I want you to. But you have the option. If you're not comfortable, the government says it's okay, and they will make provisions for your child to receive a full education at home. Okay?
Wonderful, wonderful. There's one thing I do want to ask, just in closing here. Do either of you foresee the future of education here in the United States? Because you said we're now competing against the rest of the world now that things are virtual. Mm-hmm. Do you foresee a universal or a worldwide standard of education that each country is going to have to meet relative to competing against other countries, or even just making sure we're on the same level so that we function in an equitable fashion?
I think the United States is catching up to that. That does exist in Europe. France, Finland has a phenomenal education system, as well as Australia. They do have that, and we're catching up. That is, Dr. Mensah, one of the advantages to what's happening. It's forcing Americans, we're not in the top 10. The last time I checked, the United States was number 23 from the bottom, not the top. So we're very low. But with this global standard, and it's already there. We just don't subside to it, but we need to, and we're trying to get there. So Yeah, we're on our way, but it does exist. It's interesting that you said that.
Wonderful. Thank you both very much. We're looking forward to, and I know we're gonna be talking again about this. So we'll be looking very well forward to having you back. Mr. Wells, any concluding thoughts here?
Just that this has been an important and very valuable conversation. And so
Thank
we
you.
thank all of you, all of our panelists for being with us today. Certainly we thank all of our audience members for tuning in and watching us today as well. Let me remind everyone that we will post a video replay of today's webinar to the Mensah Medical YouTube channel. That video should be posted later this evening or first thing tomorrow. We'll also have links to that YouTube video available on the Mensah Medical Facebook page. And so we encourage you to come back and listen again to some of the important points that were made today, and also share this with your friends and family and colleagues. Let them know that they can go to YouTube and look up Mensah Medical and find this video where this important information resides.
Before we leave, Ms. Tara and Ms. Mull, do we have potential contact information? Somebody's got a question about something that you said. Do they go to the state website? Do they go to district, whatever have you? Do we have contact information or a source?
You can contact me via my email, which is jtarathomas@gmail.com. And I respond. I do. Sometimes I'm a day late, like Mr. Wells needs a little time around with this, but I do it. So jtarathomas@gmail.com.
We'll have that posted.
Okay, Ms. Mull?
Yes. So, yes, I'm BAM50@sbcglobal.net.
Thank you both. Thank you both.
Thank you for the invitation.
This was wonderful. I enjoyed it. Thank you, Dr. Mensah.
Thank
you,
you.
Mr. Wells. Thank you.
Yes, and we'll make those emails available in the comments section of that YouTube video that we post. So
Thank
folks
you.
know how to get in touch with you for answers to these important questions. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you again next week with another Coping with COVID conversation. Until then, thanks for being with us.
Be safe.
Be safe. Good night.
Good night.